Jerome Vance, at 39 years old, made a steady $61,000 a year as a senior HVAC technician. It was a good living, an honest one, built on sweat and skill, on knowing the intricate language of compressors and ductwork. He owned his 2019 Ford F-150 outright, a $45,000 truck that was his mobile office. And he was 5 years away from paying off the mortgage on the modest 1,400 square foot bungalow he shared with his wife Tanya on the west side of Charlotte. His life was a ledger of carefully managed numbers that added up to a quiet, stable peace. That peace was shattered at 3:17 p.m. on a sweltering Saturday in July, under the shade of a sprawling oak tree in his brother-in-law's meticulously landscaped backyard. The event was Marcus's annual Summer Smokeout, a carefully curated performance of success. Marcus, Tanya's younger brother, was the founder of Thorn Residential Solutions, a contracting firm that was, by all accounts, thriving. He lived in a 4,000 square foot new build in Ballantyne that cost a cool $800,000, drove a $95,000 BMW X5, and wore a $7,000 Tag Heuer watch on his wrist. The air at these gatherings was always thick with the smell of slow-cooked brisket and condescension. Jerome was manning the grill, a task he was always given, flipping $20 packs of artisan sausages. He wore his usual weekend uniform, a 5-year-old pair of Levi's, a $20 black polo shirt, and his $89 Timex weekender. Marcus sauntered over, holding a $300 bottle of bourbon, and poured a generous amount into a crystal glass. "Still tinkering with air conditioners, Jerome?" Marcus asked, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone designed for closing deals. He swirled the amber liquid, the ice clinking like coins. Jerome gave a tight smile. "Still keeping people cool in this heat, Marcus? It's a necessary job." Marcus chuckled, a low sound that didn't reach his eyes. "Necessary, sure, but you gotta think bigger, man. You've been at that same salary for what, 3 years now? Tanya tells me you guys are still driving that old Camry." The Camry was Tanya's, a 2012 model with 187,000 miles on it. It was paid for. "It gets her from A to B," Jerome said, his voice even. Marcus took a sip of his bourbon and leaned in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper that was loud enough for everyone at the nearby patio table to hear. "Look, I get it. You're a simple guy. But you're married to my sister now. It's a bad look. All this talk about saving and investing your little 60 grand a year? Just stop pretending you have money, man. We see your pay stubs. We know what you are." The words landed like stones in the humid air. The chatter from the patio table died down. Jerome felt a dozen pairs of eyes on him. He looked over at Tanya, who was sitting with her friends, wearing a new $250 sundress. She met his gaze for a fraction of a second, then looked away, a nervous laugh escaping her lips as she turned to her friend and whispered something. That laugh, more than Marcus's insult, was the real blow. It was a sound of complicity, of shared amusement at his expense. He felt the heat from the grill on his face, a flush of humiliation that had nothing to do with the charcoal. He said nothing, just turned back to the sausages, his knuckles white on the handle of the tongs. He had no idea then that this single, brutal moment of public degradation was the beginning of the end, and also the beginning of his liberation. What no one at that party knew, what even his own wife didn't seem to comprehend, was that Jerome Vance was not a simple man. He was a quiet man. There was a profound difference. Their life together had been built on a facade of domestic normalcy, a picture painted with broad strokes of routine and small, dollar-tagged details. Their bungalow on Oakhaven Drive was a testament to Jerome's quiet competence. He'd bought it for $190,000 6 years ago, and their mortgage payment was a manageable $1,822 a month. He'd personally replaced the entire HVAC system, a $12,000 job he'd done himself for the $3,000 cost of the unit. He'd retiled the bathroom floor, a weekend project that cost him $400 in materials instead of the $2,000 a contractor would charge. He cooked dinner 4 nights a week, simple, hearty meals of roasted chicken and vegetables, with a grocery bill that rarely exceeded $150 a week. Tanya, on the other hand, moved through this world of careful budgeting like a tourist. She worked as a part-time bookkeeper for a small marketing firm, bringing in about $28,000 a year, yet her tastes were pure Ballantine. She coveted the life her brother Marcus lived, a life measured in brand names and square footage. There was the $700 Tory Burch handbag she'd bought, claiming it was an investment piece. The $400 monthly payments on her Peloton bike that sat in the spare bedroom collecting dust. She would scroll through Instagram, showing Jerome pictures of Marcus's latest acquisition. "Look, honey, Marcus just got a $6,000 outdoor kitchen installed," she'd say, her voice wistful, as Jerome patched a crack in their plaster wall with a $5 tub of spackle. "That's nice," Jerome would reply, his focus on making the lines smooth and invisible. "Our grill works just fine." He loved her, or at least he loved the woman he thought she was when they married, the woman who had praised his steady hands and his calm demeanor. But over the past few years, a subtle poison had seeped into their interactions. Her compliments became backhanded. "It's so great that you can fix things yourself, Jerome. It saves us so much money." The unspoken addendum hung in the air, "because we don't have enough to pay someone else." He remembered a conversation a few months before the cookout. They were sitting on their 20-year-old sofa, watching a home renovation show. A couple on screen was celebrating their new kitchen, a $50,000 masterpiece of marble and stainless steel. "Can you imagine?" Tanya had sighed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Having a kitchen like that?" "It's beautiful," Jerome agreed. "But our kitchen is functional. Everything works." She sat up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "Functional?" "Jerome, that's all you ever talk about. Functional. Don't you ever want something more? Something beautiful? Something that shows people we've made it?" "Who are we trying to show?" he'd asked gently. "I don't know. Everyone. My brother. He doesn't understand why I settled." The word hung in the air between them, ugly and sharp. She tried to backtrack, to soften it. But the damage was done. Settled. He was something she had settled for. He was a functional appliance in the home of her life, not a luxury feature. He went to bed that night feeling a familiar, dull ache in his chest, the quiet suffering of a man who knows he is being perpetually weighed and found wanting. He had no idea just how deep that betrayal already ran. He thought it was just about her aspirations, about her brother's influence. He didn't know it was already about money, his money. The humiliation from the cookout didn't fade. It settled deep in Jerome's bones, a cold, hard kernel of anger. In the days that followed, Tanya's behavior grew more dismissive, Marcus's arrogance more pronounced. The cruelty escalated, not in one grand explosion, but in a series of small, cutting remarks that chipped away at Jerome's sense of self-worth. A week after the party, Jerome came home from a grueling 12-hour day. He'd spent most of it in the suffocating heat of a commercial crawl space, wrestling with a faulty condenser unit. His hands were scraped, his shirt soaked through with sweat, but he'd gotten the client's air conditioning back online. He walked into the kitchen at 7:45 p.m. to find Tanya on the phone with Marcus, her voice bright and animated. She saw him, and her face tightened. "Okay, Mark, I gotta go." "Jerome's home." She hung up without saying goodbye to him. She was looking at a catering menu on her laptop for a party Marcus was throwing. The quote on the screen was for $4,500. "Tough day?" she asked, not looking up from the screen. "Long one," Jerome said, pulling a bottle of water from the fridge. The cold plastic felt good against his grimy hands. "What's for dinner?" She waved a dismissive hand. "I didn't have time. I was helping Marcus plan his investor reception. Just grab some leftovers." He opened the fridge. There was a single dried-out piece of chicken from 2 nights ago. He closed the door, his appetite gone. "Helping Marcus? I thought you were supposed to be working on the quarterly reports for your job today." "This is more important," she snapped, finally looking at him. Her eyes swept over his work clothes, his dirt-streaked face, with a look of faint disgust. "This is about building a real future. Marcus is landing a $20 million development deal. He needs everything to be perfect. He trusts my eye." She turned back to the laptop, her tone softening as she imagined the glamorous event. He said, "My input is invaluable." The implication was clear. Her brother's business was a real future. His 12 hours of hard labor were just noise. Something that resulted in dirty clothes on her clean floor. 2 days later, they were having dinner at Tanya's parents' house. It was a strained, uncomfortable affair. Marcus was there, holding court at the head of the table, pontificating about market trends and capital investment. "The key," Marcus said, gesturing with a fork, "is liquidity. You have to have capital ready to deploy. You can't build an empire with a W-2 mindset. Right, Jerome?" He winked at Jerome, a cruel, knowing glint in his eye. Jerome just chewed his green beans. Tanya's father, a retired postal worker, looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Her mother just smiled, basking in Marcus's reflected glow. "Jerome believes in his pension?" Tanya said, a little too brightly. "He's got it all planned out. In 25 years, he'll get his 70%. It's very safe." The way she said safe made it sound like a terminal diagnosis. Marcus laughed, a full-throated boom this time. "Safe money is dead money. You got to make your money work for you. I put $100K into a speculative real estate fund last month. Could double it by Christmas." He leaned back, patting his stomach. "Scared money don't make money." Jerome felt a hot surge of anger. He wanted to tell them. He wanted to lay it all out on the table. For the past 18 months, he had been doing exactly what Marcus was talking about, but in his own quiet, methodical way. After his own father passed away 3 years ago, he had inherited $94,000. He told Tanya it was $75,000, and he'd put $60,000 of it into a low-risk index fund for their retirement. That was the story she knew. The story she and her brother mocked. The truth was different. He had taken the full $94,000, combined it with years of his own private savings from side jobs and overtime, and had been making strategic, private investments. He'd spent hundreds of hours at night after Tanya was asleep, studying market reports, learning about business structures, reading financial statements. He wasn't a simple man. He was a student. He was a planner. He just didn't feel the need to broadcast it. The biggest secret was his investment in a silent partnership in a local, rapidly growing commercial HVAC firm. He saw potential where others saw rusty ducts. He understood the business from the ground up. He'd put $74,000 into it, an equity stake that was already showing a 30% return on paper. The quarterly statements came to a P.O. box he'd opened for this exact purpose. Tanya knew nothing about it. He drove home from that dinner in silence, Tanya humming beside him, still buzzing from her brother's performance. He watched the streetlights slide over her face, the face of a woman he was realizing he didn't know at all. The outrage was no longer a dull ache. It was a sharp, focused point. He knew something was fundamentally broken. The foundation of his marriage was cracked, and he could feel the whole structure starting to give way. He He still thought the problem was just disrespect. He still thought it was just her ambition and her brother's ego. He was about to find out it was grand larceny. The discovery came 2 weeks to the day after the cookout. It was a Tuesday, August 10th at 2:48 p.m. The air in the attic was a monstrous, 120-degree blanket of stagnant heat and insulation fibers. Jerome was hunched over a 30-year-old train air handler, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Sweat dripped from his nose and sizzled on the hot metal casing. This was the part of the job that broke younger men, the part that required a kind of stubborn patience most people didn't possess. For Jerome, it was a place of focus. In the roar of the machinery, all the noise of his life, Marcus's taunts, Tanya's sighs, faded away. His phone, resting on a nearby joist, buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And a third time. Annoyed, he wiped his hands on his jeans, the denim already dark with sweat, and picked it up. 3 texts from Marcus. He almost dismissed them, but a flicker of curiosity made him open the notification. The first text read, "Hey man, you got a minute?" The second, a minute later, "Need to talk to you about something important. Business." The third, sent just moments before, was the one that stopped his heart. "Look, I'm in a jam. A deal came through faster than expected, and I'm short on liquid capital for a materials deposit. I know things are tight for you, but this is a sure thing. I need to borrow $40,000. I'll pay you back with 10% interest in 90 days. Would be a huge help and a good way for you to finally make some real money. Let me know. Marcus Thorne, CEO." Jerome stared at the message. A bitter laugh caught in his throat. The sheer audacity of it. The condescension baked right into the request. A good way for you to finally make some real money. After weeks of being mocked for his supposed poverty, here was the great Marcus Thorne, cap in hand. But it wasn't the request that made the world tilt on its axis. It was what was beneath it. A professional email signature automatically appended to his texts. Marcus Thorne, CEO, and Tanya Vance, CFO, Thorne Residential Solutions, LLC, 1414, Ballantine Corporate Place, Charlotte, NC. Jerome read it again. And again. Tanya Vance, CFO, Chief Financial Officer. The air in the attic suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. He stumbled back, sitting heavily on a wooden beam, the rough wood digging into his legs. Dust motes danced in his flashlight beam, each one a tiny, illuminated secret. Tanya, his wife, the part-time bookkeeper, the woman who claimed to be helping her brother plan parties and review proposals. She was the CFO of his company. 1,000 little moments suddenly clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Her late nights on the laptop, which she'd claimed were for her marketing job. The hushed phone calls with Marcus she'd end abruptly when he entered the room. The way she'd started collecting the mail every day, sorting through it before he got home. The separate bank account she'd opened, saying it was for her personal savings, a place to put her $28,000 a year salary. And then, the biggest piece of all slammed into place, so violently it felt like a physical blow. His $74,000 equity investment, the one she didn't know about. Or did she? He remembered 2 months ago, a statement from the P.O. box had been accidentally forwarded to their house. He'd been working late, and Tanya had mentioned it casually. "You got some weird-looking mail today from some investment group. I put it on your desk." He hadn't thought anything of it at the time. He'd shredded it, relieved she hadn't opened it. But what if she had? He felt a cold dread wash over him, a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning unit he was supposed to be fixing. He pulled out his phone again, his fingers trembling slightly as he navigated to his banking app. He logged into their joint savings account. The balance was $10,540. It should have been over $30,000. He scrolled through the transaction history. 2 months ago, a transfer of $22,000. Destination, Thorn Residential Solutions, LLC. His $74,000 investment. His $22,000 from their joint savings. $96,000. Gone. Funneled by his wife into her brother's company. The company that was now apparently so broke that its CEO was texting an HVAC technician for a $40,000 loan. He stood up, his legs unsteady. The attic felt like a tomb. He switched off his flashlight, plunging the space into near darkness. He could hear the homeowner's television murmuring from 2 floors below. A sound from a different world. A world where things still made sense. He stood there in the suffocating heat, surrounded by the guts of a stranger's house, and felt absolutely, utterly alone. The humiliation of the cookout was nothing compared to this. This was not an insult. This was a conspiracy. This was theft. And they had made a critical mistake. They had underestimated him. And they had no idea what was coming. For the next week, Jerome lived a double life. On the surface, he was the same man. He went to work at 6:30 a.m., his F-150 loaded with $4,000 worth of tools. He came home, showered, and sat down for dinner with Tanya, asking about her day. He listened as she talked about her bookkeeping job, about a difficult client or a software glitch, and he nodded along, his face a mask of placid interest. Inside, a silent, cold fury was building, meticulously shaping itself into a plan. This was the strategic restraint he had learned from years of diagnosing complex systems. You don't just start ripping wires. You observe, you gather data, you find the precise point of failure, and then you act. Each lie she told was a scene in a grim play where he was the only audience member who knew the script. On Wednesday evening, he sat across from her at their small, $50 IKEA kitchen table. He'd made spaghetti, her favorite. "How was work?" he asked, twirling pasta onto his fork. "Oh, you know, same old," she said, scrolling through her phone. Debits, credits, numbers, numbers, numbers. She laughed lightly. "I swear, sometimes I think my brain is going to turn into a calculator." He felt a muscle in his jaw tighten. "Anything exciting with Marcus's business?" he asked, his tone deliberately casual. She looked up, a flicker of something, caution, guilt, in her eyes before it was gone. "Oh, he's just so busy. I'm trying to help him find a new caterer for his reception. The last one was asking for a ridiculous $4,500. She rolled her eyes as if sharing a complaint between equals. "The nerve." He just nodded. "Sounds stressful." He was gathering evidence. Each lie was another brick in the wall he was building around them. He had not responded to Marcus's text. His silence seemed to unnerve them. Marcus called twice, letting it ring before hanging up. Tanya started watching him, trying to gauge his mood. She became overly affectionate, rubbing his shoulders as he sat on the couch, telling him how hard he worked. It was all a performance, a desperate attempt to ensure the simple, reliable man was still simple and reliable. Meanwhile, his real life was happening in stolen moments. During his lunch breaks, he wasn't eating a $6 sandwich in his truck. He was on the phone, his voice low, making appointments. After Tanya went to sleep, he was at his desk, the glow of his $800 Dell laptop illuminating stacks of documents. His first call had been to Sarah Jenkins, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney whose small office was located in a modest brick building downtown, a world away from the glass towers of Ballantyne. Sarah was a black woman in her early 50s, with a reputation for being a shark in a sensible $200 pantsuit. He'd found her through a referral from a commercial client. He sat in her office at 1:15 p.m. on Thursday, a file folder on his lap. The consultation fee was $300 for the hour. He laid it all out. The text from Marcus, the CFO title, the missing $22,000 from their joint account, the suspicion about his $74,000 private investment. Sarah listened without interruption, her fingers steepled. When he was finished, she was silent for a long moment. "Mr. Vance," she said finally, her voice calm and firm, "this is grand larceny and financial fraud. Your wife, as your spouse, may have certain access, but what you're describing, especially the diversion of funds into a private LLC where she is an officer, is a clear breach of fiduciary duty." Then Jerome played his ace, the one thing he had kept completely to himself. "There's something else," he said, pushing a document across her desk. "Something they don't know." Sarah picked it up. It was a stock purchase agreement. She read it, her eyebrows rising slightly. She looked at him, a new respect dawning in her eyes. "When did this happen?" 4 months ago, Jerome said. Marcus's original partner was a guy named David Chen. He was a silent investor, put up the initial $200,000 for a 49% stake. Marcus had 51%. I heard through a supplier that Chen was looking to get out. He wanted to liquidate to fund a new venture. He was getting nervous about Marcus's spending. "So you bought him out?" "No," Jerome said quietly. "I did better." The LLC agreement had a right of first refusal clause for Marcus, but he had a 30-day window to match any outside offer. Chen offered me his entire 49% stake for $85,000. I knew Marcus didn't have that kind of cash lying around, but I also knew he was trying to secure a new line of credit and couldn't afford to lose his partner. So I made a different offer. I offered Chen $90,000 for 31% of the company, and I structured a separate deal to buy another 20% directly from Marcus for $50,000, which I knew he desperately needed for operating capital. He was so arrogant, so sure he was fleecing some silent rube. He didn't even read the fine print. He just saw the $50,000 wire transfer. He thought he was keeping control. Sarah leaned forward, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Don't tell me." "He sold me the 20%. I bought the 31% from Chen. The transaction closed on April 12th, Jerome said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I own 51% of Thorne Residential Solutions, LLC. I am the majority owner. Marcus Thorne is my employee, and his CFO, my wife, has been stealing my money to fund the company I own." The room was silent. Sarah Jenkins leaned back in her $600 leather chair and let out a low whistle. "Mr. Vance," she said, the smile now wide and genuine, "you are not a simple man at all. Let's get to work." For the next hour, they mapped out the strike. It would be quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. The strike was scheduled for Friday, August 20th at 10 a.m. The 10 days between the discovery and the meeting were the longest of Jerome's life. He moved through his days with a chilling sense of calm, a man walking toward a predetermined destination. He finally texted Marcus back. "Let's meet Friday at your office, 10 a.m. We can discuss the loan." Marcus's reply was instantaneous. "Sounds good. Looking forward to it." On Thursday night, Tanya made another attempt to probe his defenses. She sat next to him on the sofa, placing her hand on his knee. "Are you okay, Jerome? You've been so quiet lately." "Just tired," he said, not taking his eyes off the television. "Busy season." "Did Marcus reach out to you about anything?" she asked, her voice a little too casual. This was it. The direct lie. He turned to look at her. He studied her face, the face he had woken up next to for 7 years. He saw the flicker of anxiety in her eyes, the practiced innocence. "No," he said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "Should he have?" She pulled her hand back, relief washing over her face. "Oh no, I just know he respects your opinion on things. Practical things? She smiled, believing she was safe, believing he was still the simple man she could easily deceive. It was the last time she would ever make that mistake. The next morning, Jerome woke at 5 a.m. He put on a new $120 navy blue suit that Sarah Jenkins had insisted he buy. He wore a crisp white shirt and a simple dark tie. When he walked into the kitchen, Tanya was there, pouring coffee. She stopped, her mouth slightly open. She had never seen him in a suit before. "Wow," she said. "You look amazing. Where are you going?" "I have a meeting," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. His hands were perfectly steady. "A meeting? For what?" "Business," he said, taking a sip. He looked at her over the rim of the mug. "My business." He drove his F-15, not to a job site, but downtown to the gleaming glass tower of the Ballantine corporate place. He parked his $45,000 truck between a Porsche and a Mercedes. He walked into the lobby, his work boots replaced by polished black shoes that cost him $150. He felt an odd sense of detachment, as if he were watching a movie of his own life. He rode the silent elevator to the 14th floor. The doors opened onto a reception area designed to scream money. A massive abstract painting, probably worth $10,000, hung on one wall. A sleek, minimalist reception desk, which he guessed cost at least $5,000, sat empty. He walked down the hall to Marcus's corner office. The door was open. Marcus was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over the city, a portrait of the successful CEO. His office was a monument to his ego, a $4,000 glass and chrome desk, a set of $3,000 leather Eames chairs for visitors, and a $50,000 view. He turned as Jerome entered, a broad, confident smile on his face. He was wearing an $800 custom suit. "Jerome, my man? Glad you could make it," Marcus boomed, striding forward to shake his hand. "You clean up nice. Trying to make a good impression for your loan officer?" He laughed, clapping Jerome on the shoulder. Jerome didn't smile. He walked past Marcus and sat down in one of the expensive leather chairs, placing a thin leather portfolio on the glass desk. "Let's get to it, Marcus. You need $40,000. Marcus sat down, leaning back in his own $2,000 executive chair, the picture of magnanimity. "Yeah, man, like I said, just a temporary cash flow thing. The ROI on this new development is going to be massive. You'll have your money back, plus 10% before Thanksgiving. It's a win-win. You help out family, and your money finally gets off the sidelines." Jerome listened, his expression unreadable. He let the silence stretch after Marcus finished, the quiet hum of the building's HVAC system, a system he could probably diagnose and repair in under an hour, filling the space between them. Finally, Jerome opened his portfolio. He slid a single piece of paper across the desk. It was Marcus's loan request, printed out from the text message. "I've reviewed the request," Jerome said, his voice quiet, calm, and devastatingly clear. "As the majority owner and managing member of Thorn Residential Solutions, LLC, I'm approving the disbursement." Marcus stared at him, a look of utter confusion on his face. He blinked. "What? What did you just say? Majority owner? What are you talking about?" Jerome leaned forward slightly. "I'm talking about the 51% controlling interest I acquired on April 12th of this year. I own this company, Marcus. You work for me." The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked as if he'd been punched in the gut. He sputtered, trying to form words. That's impossible. I have 51%. I sold you a small piece, that's all." "You sold me 20%, Jerome corrected him, his voice still level. And I bought 31% from your former partner, David Chen, when you failed to exercise your right of first refusal. It's all filed with the North Carolina Secretary of State. It's all perfectly legal. Marcus's bravado completely evaporated, replaced by a raw, naked panic. He fumbled for his phone on the desk, his hand shaking so badly he could barely unlock it. "Tanya," he whispered, his eyes wide with horror. "Tanya handles the books." "Yes, I know," Jerome said. "Which brings me to the second part of this. The disbursement of your $40,000 loan is contingent on a full, immediate, and independent forensic audit of the company's books, going back 2 years. He paused, letting the words sink in. "I want to see exactly where all the money has been going, especially my money." Marcus's head snapped up. He finally understood. He frantically dialed Tanya's number and put the phone on speaker. "Marcus? How's it going? Did he agree?" Tanya's voice came through, bright and hopeful. Marcus couldn't speak. He just stared at Jerome, his mouth opening and closing, like a fish. "Hello, Tanya," Jerome said into the phone. The sound of his voice, calm and cold, made the line go silent. "Jerome? What? What are you doing there?" "We're just having a business meeting, Tanya," Jerome said. "Here in my office. I've just approved a loan for your brother, and I've also just authorized a complete audit of the company you've been working at as Chief Financial Officer. I have a feeling it's going to be very illuminating." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a choked, strangled sound. The performance was over. The facade had crumbled. In the silent 14th floor office with the $50,000 view of a city that suddenly felt like his, Jerome Vance watched his wife's and her brother's world begin to collapse. And he felt nothing but the quiet, clean satisfaction of a job well done. The consequences cascaded with brutal, mathematical precision. The audit, conducted by a firm Sarah Jenkins recommended that billed at $700 an hour, was a bloodbath. It was a formal, documented enumeration of their greed and deceit. For Tanya, the downfall was swift and total. The auditors uncovered the electronic trail of her betrayal in less than 3 days. First, the $22,000 transfer from their joint savings account, relabeled in the company's books as an investor capital injection from her. Second, and more damningly, they found evidence that she had indeed intercepted the statement for Jerome's $74,000 HVAC equity stake. She had then forged his signature on a document liquidating the entire position and transferring the funds directly into Thorn Residential Solutions. She had stolen $96,000 from her own husband. The day the preliminary audit report came in, Jerome had Sarah Jenkins file for divorce. He also had Tanya formally terminated from her position as CFO for cause, gross financial misconduct and fraud. The termination letter was delivered by a courier to their bungalow. Jerome was already staying in a $200 a night extended stay hotel. In the divorce proceedings, Tanya was obliterated. Her documented fraud meant she had no claim to the house, no claim to Jerome's pension, and no claim to any of his private investments. The $96,000 she had stolen was treated as a debt to him, which was offset against her share of their marital assets, effectively wiping her out. She walked away with her 2012 Toyota Camry, her personal belongings, and a court order to repay him an additional $12,000. The last he heard, she had moved into a cramped, 600-square-foot apartment off Sugar Creek Road for $1,200 a month and was looking for work as a bookkeeper again, a black mark on her record that would follow her forever. For Marcus, the consequences were a slow, public unraveling. The audit revealed that his company was a house of cards built on vanity and debt. He had been using new investor money, Jerome's money, to pay off old debts and fund his lavish lifestyle. He had secured a $1.5 million line of credit based on fraudulent profit and loss statements that Tanya had helped him create. He had outstanding invoices to subcontractors totaling over $200,000. As the majority owner, Jerome had two choices: declare bankruptcy and dissolve the company, or try to salvage it. He chose to salvage it. His first act was to call a meeting with the bank. He and Sarah Jenkins laid out the fraud, but also presented a new, realistic business plan. He leveraged his own reputation in the HVAC and construction community to renegotiate with the subcontractors, setting up payment plans. His second act was to remove Marcus from any position of authority. He was no longer CEO. Jerome dissolved his executive role and offered him a position as a non-salaried, commission-based project manager. His income went from a projected $250,000 a year to zero. The fallout was catastrophic for Marcus. The bank called in his personal loans, which had been secured against his now worthless company shares. He was forced to sell the $800,000 house in Ballantyne at a loss. The $95,000 BMW X5 was repossessed. The $7,000 watch was sold to a pawn shop. Within 6 months, he was living in a rented townhouse and driving a 10-year-old Honda Accord. His reputation in the Charlotte development community was destroyed. No one would fund him. No one would partner with him. He ended up taking a job as a site foreman for a large national construction firm, wearing a hard hat and reporting to a man 10 years his junior, earning $75,000 a year, less than Jerome's stolen $96,000. Throughout this period, Jerome's phone was a constant barrage of their collapsing worlds. The voicemail started with anger, a message from Marcus an hour after the meeting. "You son of a... You think you can just come in and steal my company? My life's work? You have no idea who you're messing with, you grease monkey. My lawyers will tear you apart." Then came Tanya's pleading. A tearful message that night. "Jerome, please, baby, call me. We can fix this. It was a mistake. I was just trying to help my brother. I was going to tell you, I swear, I love you. Don't do this to us." Then denial from Marcus. "This is a misunderstanding. The numbers are just creative. It's how the game is played. You wouldn't understand. We can fix the books. Just call off the audit, man, for Tanya's sake." Then came the horror as the audit's findings were revealed. A choked voicemail from Tanya. "They know. Oh God, Jerome, they know about the signature. I can go to jail. Please. I'll do anything. I'll pay it all back. Just please stop this." And finally, a message from Marcus a month later, his voice hollow and defeated. "I took the foreman job. They want me on site in Gastonia at 6 a.m. tomorrow. You win, Jerome. You destroyed me. I hope you're happy." Jerome saved every message. He listened to them once, then archived them. They were not trophies. They were evidence. They were the final detailed accounting of a debt that had been paid in full. 2 years passed. The world did not stop turning. For Jerome, it began to turn in a new, more hopeful direction. The glass tower in Ballantyne was a distant memory. He had sold the ostentatious office, a move that immediately saved the company $20,000 a month in lease payments. He rebranded Thorn Residential Solutions, scrubbing Marcus's name from its identity. It was now Vance Community Contracting, a name that reflected a new mission. He ran the entire operation from a small, practical office space he leased for $1,500 a month, just a few miles from his own neighborhood. He still lived in the same bungalow on Oakhaven Drive, but it was different now. It was his, truly his. He had used his own skills and the now profitable company's resources to renovate it. A new $25,000 kitchen with gleaming quartz countertops and solid wood cabinets he'd built himself. A backyard deck, a $3,000 project that had become his favorite place to sit in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The house was no longer just a place of function, it was a place of peace, a sanctuary he had built and defended. The company was thriving, but not in the way Marcus had envisioned. It wasn't about flashy development deals or speculative funds. It was built on the same principles as Jerome himself: steady, reliable, and honest. He focused on residential and small commercial HVAC and renovation projects, building a reputation for quality work at a fair price. The company cleared a net profit of $300,000 in its first year under his leadership. But the most significant change was the apprenticeship program he started. He partnered with a local community college to bring in 2 young people from his own West Side neighborhood every year. He paid them a good wage, bought them their first set of tools, a $500 starter kit for each, and taught them the HVAC trade himself. He saw in them the same quiet potential that others had overlooked in him. It was the best investment he'd ever made. He was sitting on his new deck one Saturday afternoon, the sun warm on his face, sketching out a plan for a new service route. A woman's laughter drifted from the kitchen. Her name was Aaliyah. She was a 3rd-grade teacher at the local elementary school, a kind, intelligent woman with a smile that made his chest ache in a good way. They had met at a neighborhood potluck. He loved the simple, uncomplicated joy of her presence. She loved his calm hands and the way he listened more than he spoke. She knew his story, and she admired the man who had emerged from the fire. Not hardened, but refined. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "This is Tanya. I know I have no right to ask, but my car broke down. The repair is $1,200 and I don't have it. I don't know who else to call." He looked at the message for a long moment. 2 years ago, a message like that would have sent a jolt of anger or pity through him. Now he just felt a quiet finality. He thought about the empire of lies she and her brother had tried to build and how it had all crumbled to dust. He thought about the solid deck beneath his feet, the thriving business he was building, the sound of happy laughter from his kitchen. He had forgiven them, not for their sake, but for his own. Forgiveness was the final act of closing a ledger, of marking an account as paid, so it no longer had any power over you. He typed a reply. "I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you figure it out." He blocked the number and put the phone down. Aaliyah came out onto the deck carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed him one, their fingers brushing. "Everything okay?" she asked, her warm brown eyes full of concern. He smiled, a real, easy smile that reached his own eyes. "Everything is perfect." True wealth, he had learned, isn't measured by the height of your office building or the brand of your watch. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about the solid foundation under your feet. It's about the skills in your hands, the integrity in your heart, and the quiet, unshakable knowledge of your own worth. It's about building something that lasts, not for show, but for service. And in that, Jerome Vance was the richest man he knew. Have you ever felt underestimated in your own life? Share your story in the comments below, and let's talk about the power of quiet strength. And if you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of love, betrayal, and the justice that follows.